everybody, and welcome to another exciting, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama, where I show you, as the name implies, how to work on radios, stereos, record players, television sets, other things that tend to run on glowing vacuum tubes, and today we have an RCA that's in pieces. One of our members has a warehouse apparently full of radios, and he had a bunch of half-finished projects that he didn't feel like working on. So we have the guts and the cabinet. The cabinet has been stripped, and so a lot of the difficult work has been done. I even sanded it a little bit the other night. It's almost ready for finish. I'm not very good at refinishing, but I'll try. Chassis is not restored. It's 100% original, and so we're going to bring it over to the bench and see what's going on. Well, indeed. 100% original, and that includes the original electrolytics. That's not original. Someone added that ceramic cap later, but otherwise I don't see. Well, one, two, got a few of them. Looks like we got 3 ceramic caps. Those are probably from the 50s. A little bit of goo coming out of the transformer. It's not unusual. If you have them on for hours and hours, then there's a real possibility that some of the tar that's inside of there will just very slowly wick up into the wire and soak out. Don't be freaked out. It's fine. Speaker is kind of rough looking. I can fix this, but I want to make sure it doesn't rub. It's not rubbing, so that's probably okay. Quite a bit of tubes for a table set. This is a big table set too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 tubes. That is borderline floor console type level of tubes. Or if it's push-pull output. That's a 6K6. I'm going to bet this is also a 6K6. Makes sense. What are you? Yep. Okay, so push-pull 6K6. 6K6 being the punier cousin of the 6V6. And where's our... That's probably the rectifier at the end. 5Y4 question mark. Is that what it says on it? Telling they're pretty good. 5Y4. I'm not sure what that question mark was supposed to be. I'm not going to power it up because at this age, it is a... I didn't see a label or anything because it got sanded off, obviously. This is probably a late 30s, maybe early 40s set. That electrolytic is shot. It's completely shot. And I'm looking at it. It may or may not be original. And let me get my flashlight out here and see what values that it calls for. 20, 10, 10, 10 microfarads at 450 volts. It's not rocket science. The only one that's 20 is the unmarked one, and that's only 25 volts. The rest of them are 10 microfarads. That looks like a replacement electrolytic. That looks like that's probably the same era as the ceramic caps. 1950s. But I'm still going to replace those, and then we'll give it a test fire. I want to check the coupling caps between the output stage, because I recently had a Philco that had a shorted cap between the output stage, and that almost fried my power transformer. So lesson learned. So let's flip it over and get to wake. Let's take a little bit of a closer look in here. There's all kinds of funny business going on here. There's been a little bit of work done over the years. We have one of these red Cornell capacitors. That's probably about the same era as those other ceramic discs we just looked at. There's also this guy. I was curious about this. It says safety mic blue ribbon electrolytic capacitor. I don't want to damage it anymore, but it's from Oakland, California, so it's got a little bit of a local history. I will probably save that guy because there's not a lot of electrical components that were made around this area, which you wouldn't. It's kind of hard to imagine now, since this area is now like the heart of Silicon Valley. That might be a replacement too, this resistor. Makes me wonder if the set's had a shit ton of use. Got this guy here. It says Galvin Industries. That's a Motorola product. Clearly RCA, who is in competition with Motorola, wouldn't be using Motorola capacitors. Again, that's probably a later replacement. My experience actually with RCAs of this era is usually you'll see a cap like this, which has no name, has an RCA part number and the generic like value printed on it. So there's a possibility, I'm looking at this, that not many of the caps in here are actually original. This one, that one, this one obviously, and the ceramic guys are replacements. Meaning there's only 1, 2, 3, there's another one, 4. There's only 4 paper caps original to the set. There's also these guys, these little black things. We call them deer turd caps because they kind of look like deer shit. And they're mica and they're in hard sealed rubber. And if they're not cracked, they're generally okay. This has some of the awful pre-war for the U.S. wiring in it, the rubber crumbly wiring. As long as you don't disturb it and it kind of stays in place, you're okay. Some of it that's longer I'll probably replace just because. But the first thing we need to do is replace these 4 electrolytic capacitors in this guy. So 5 total. And the one that is unmarked on this can on the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see this, but there's little shapes that are cut out. There's a triangle, a square, half moon, and then no marking. The no marking goes to this black wire here. That's our 20 microfarad at 25 volts. And it's going to the output stage. Usually you'll see some sort of biasing coming off the output stage. Probably helps with your tonal quality just a little bit. But we need to replace that. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking what I'll do is this is a grounding point. This guy here. I don't like that crumbly wiring. I'm just going to run the negative here and the positive directly to the source off that output tube. Because I know if I try to move that wire, it's just going to shatter. Okay, so I've replaced all the electrolytics, including this guy over here, what used to be the orange Oakland made caps. So let's go ahead and fire it up, see what happens. Pilot lights are not attached. That's okay. Also, what I did is I patched up the speaker here. I don't want to cause any more damage, because if you got it cracked and everything and you start playing music or radio, it's going to potentially make the cracks worse. So I filled it in with a flexible sealant. You don't want to use a hard glue, otherwise you'll ruin the... Obviously we've got a lot of dirt in the volume pot. Also my tuning string is broke. Shooting in the dark here. Probably a manual control somewhere. Nothing. That's probably tone control. Oh, this is aggravating. Of course, all the tabs are missing from what was in there. That's a big transformer. Okay, I need to look up this model. I'm not sure, like, what the hell. I need to make sure the antenna is connected. I'm picking up nothing. Well, it's not picking up any radio. And a lot of people that have been working on radios a long time will make a mistake or they'll be in a state of mind to think to themselves, Oh, it can't be something as stupid as a bad tube. But if your radio doesn't work and you're getting audio, test your tubes first. It's easy enough. It's the first thing to knock out of the chain of things that could possibly go wrong. So I'm going to start. And unfortunately, there's a lot of tubes here I don't have in my stock. They're over at the museum. 6SF5. I think my output stage is probably okay. I'm going to test everything though. Sometimes if you have a shorted tube, especially a rectifier, that can really cause all kinds of issues. But I'll just go through all these tubes. If I find any that are shorted or bad, see if I have a replacement. If not, that'll have to wait till tomorrow, and I'll go over and get a replacement and see if that fixes. Because if you got a bad tube, that's clearly going to cause the radio to stop working, which is why everyone had to go to the grocery store or wherever to get replacement tubes. All right, well, all the tubes tested good. So it's something else more sinister. Usually then my next step is to take a look at my work and see if I've missed anything, because sometimes restoration error is to blame. So I'm going to flip it over and just make sure I connected everything correctly. All right, so I checked my B+ voltages. They're fine. I think what I've got going on here is one of these old caps is shorted. And I can tell that when I start turning some of my tone controls up and down. That's a shorted cap. So I'm going to replace them all anyway. They need to be replaced. I wouldn't leave any of those in there. But one of the remaining shitty old paper caps is shot, and it needs to be replaced. So just might as well replace them all, and then we'll reconvene, see if there's any improvement. All right, welcome back to day 2 of working on the RCA, and I did find out what it is. It is a RCA 18T, and I have the schematic here, so that'll be useful. And basically, I tried it out a little bit today again, and what I think seems to be happening is we have good audio, and it seems like if I listen carefully, I am getting reception, but it's very, very, very faint. So I think the oscillator is working, but for whatever reason, I'm not getting anything through. Now there's there's 2 older caps that are still in the circuit. And for the sake of, knocking all other possibilities away, I am going to replace those 2. And then it's going to be, if it still doesn't work, which it probably won't, it'll be time to start running some diagnostics. There could be any number of things happening here. But in particular, this cap is coming off of the wafer switch for the bands, and that could be definitely a problem. And I'm also going to check some of this crumbly wiring. It could be that something is touching. Not sure. That's part of the fun of working on those radios, is unraveling a mystery, and I'm definitely not 100% sure what's going on here. But it ain't working right. Well, I just noticed something idiotically stupid, which is this cap, which is supposed to go to the chassis ground, and last night I wasn't looking carefully, and I assumed this went to ground, but it doesn't. In fact, it's a piece of phenolic plastic. So that probably explains a lot. In fact, I'm wondering, I need to rewind my video and see what went where, because if that also is supposed to go to ground, and instead it's going to this floating attachment here, which is then in turn going to the tone switch, then that could cause all kinds of problems. So rack it up to repairman error. Again, I'm going to rewind the video, and actually I could just take a look what's coming off of this guy. That's one of the IF transformers. There's no reason why that should be attached to the tone control. Let me just take a look at the schematic here and confirm something. Okay, just confirmed with the schematic. This one's fine. This is exactly correct. This is wrong. So I'm going to desolder that negative in and run it true chassis ground. Probably what's happening here. This is probably injecting. This is probably clamping down on the signal, the radio signal somehow. I'm not an engineer, so that's just my super simplistic explanation. But I suspect that when I put this where it's supposed to go, we might get either full restoration of radio functionality or a drastic improvement, because that's not supposed to go there at all. Okay, now that I've made that correction, let's give it a test fire again. Warm it up. I have no idea knowing which. I'm assuming one of these must be manual tuning. Not totally shooting in the dark here. That did absolutely nothing. Now I'm curious if I've made any other stupid mistakes here. Let's see, where are my IF-RF related tubes? They're over here. Still got that old cap in there that probably could have something to do with it. There's my oscillator coil right here. Oh, how frustrating this is. Nothing. Zilch. Nada. Alright, well that didn't do anything, so clearly I need to go back to the drawing board here. Alright, it's still not working, but the good news is I have a very nice schematic here that even shows the keys. And what I'm going to do is we can face the set, turn it around this way, and I'll have this nice, neat schematic in front of me. And I'm going to start measuring pin voltages. Let's see here. I'm going to measure all of my radio-related pin voltages. And if you start finding something wrong, then you can basically test the components that are tied to that incorrect reading. I'm usually not this organized, but since this is such a... These schematics usually are difficult for me to read, but this is a really good print, so that makes life a lot easier, because I'm too cheap to actually buy schematics. Okay, well I measured all the pin voltages and they're good. So it's not related to the tubes and their connections, it's something else. I'm slightly suspicious about these deer turd caps. They can sometimes go bad. So I'm going to get at my cap checker and see if it tells me anything about them. Man, this one's turned out to be a pickle. I'm running a basically 455K out of my signal generator at the maximum settings. Everything is cranked up to as far as it'll go, and nothing's getting through. So the radio is essentially completely deaf. Completely deaf. And I don't know, I'm kind of head scratching kind of going on right now. I've got happy tube pins, and I did not test those shitty rubber caps, though. That's what I'm going to do next, because nothing else is working. Alright, well, I have to admit a very embarrassing mistake. I was like scratching my head. I detached all the capacitors that were left. They measured the way they should be. All my voltages were good. According to the schematic, I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I don't know why this just popped in my head. It's like, I'm going to soak the controls again. And I remembered I didn't clean the tone control. I was like, so what? But I did, and I got radio again.
American Christ, the Lord is with thee.
5 years after that movement started, that's exactly.
It's seriously dirty
Work. That's the pregnancy.
tone control.
That is spread across this country and has created what we like to call this army of compassion. And a pitch. Swing and a little roller towards first.
I think it needs a tune-up, though. Sounds like it's out of alignment. Should be more sensitive than that with that many tubes. But the thing is, the radio is working! And I probably could have saved a lot of heartache and headache. How is it now? It's almost 6. I've been here since 4. I've wasted 2 hours. Oh well, the radio works. And that's better than not working. Alright, welcome to day 3, working on the RCA. And as seen from last night, I did get it working. So now that we've done that, I am going to revert to the cabinet. Now what I did the other day is I carefully sanded it down. It had already been stripped and everything. And I decided to try something new. See, I'm not great at refinishing things, and I think it's because of my brush work. I tend to use polyurethane, which I know a lot of people are like, don't do that. And I just hate having to clean the brushes and all the other stuff. But I am pretty decent at spray painting things. So I bought spray semi-gloss polyurethane. First of all, I got a sticker shock. I cannot believe how much stuff costs now. These cans were $16 a can. I feel like they used to be like $9 or something. But, you know, such is the world we live in right now. As some of my British watchers are probably experiencing as well. We all are. But shit happens. So I'm going to treat this case the same way that I treat my plastic cases, which is I'm going to use like sweeping motions with the spray can so that I don't cause any runs or inconsistencies. Before I do this, I need to go check my email real quick. It's the end of the day for work. Just make sure I don't have any emails, and then we'll get started. All right, well, this is after using up literally an entire freaking can. And I'm gonna wait for this truck to go by. Sorry, guy's got loud exhaust. Anyway, I knew that it was probably gonna take more than I thought, but I mean, and again, this stuff's expensive. Let me see how fast it's drying. Oh, it's drying fast. It said within 2 hours you can recoat. I think I'd like a little bit less wood grain, or like a little bit less wood texture coming through. I want it to look a little more flat. This is way the hell easier than brush painting, and it looks better. There's no runs. Granted, it's not a perfect finish. It's not a perfect sanding job. It's not a perfect cabinet. It is what it is, and I have no doubt that I'll fully admit that refinishing is a whole different art form in itself. I'm just not very good at it. I'm trying to get better at it, but it takes practice. All right, back to the chassis. There's a few things I want to do. I want to replace some of the wiring in here that's a little too crumbly for comfort and running through too many different things, like this guy, which is running in and out of that and going all the way up to these 2 different tubes. If that were to short, I remember looking at the pin voltages, that had some pretty high voltage on it. That would not be good. Got a few other pieces like this wire here. I want to replace that. Obviously this wire, maybe this green wire. And then something else I noticed right before I quit last night was whoever installed this cord, I think they might have accidentally not realize that some of the insulation peeled off in a funny way because you've got exposed wire here, which is like not good if that touches that. So we need to probably, the cord itself is in great shape, but I think what I need to do is like cut it here and shove it, you know, up that way so we make sure we have good insulation on everything. I'm going to add an audio input. It already has one. And you can see it says here, this is something they did in a lot of the pre-war sets, if you can read it upside down. It says this instrument is designed for use with television records and future frequency modulation devices. There was kind of this belief that when television came out, which was supposed to have happened any day because RCA invested a ton of money into it. In fact, I think they introduced some of their early television sets at the, when was the New York World's Fair? I think it was 1939 or 1940. Someone else can correct me. But anyway, that was a major thing. And the theory was, I believe, if you've got consoles and radios, let's add an RCA jack, which is, it's called this. RCA invented this form of jack. You could plug in another device and have your sound. I'm going to utilize this same thing and run a cord to it. And so when we switch it over to phono connector or phono connection, we will be able to listen to music. And then we switch the band switch over here. I think the phono switch must be off of here because we've got it coming off the tone switch somehow. And then we'll be able to listen to music. All right. So I will, again, I'll do some cleaning up, neatening up, adding cord fix. And then we're going to need to run a fuse. I'm hoping I have another fuse holder somewhere. And that way, if something goes awry with the set, it'll blow the fuse versus blowing up the set. Danger Beach. Just bought this at the store. Let's see. I don't know about that. It tastes a little funny. Oh well. Anyway, as you can see, I've replaced a lot of wiring that was in troublesome areas. The rest of it looks okay. I've also added this fuse. This goes between the line and the switch, basically, so that if anything, basically to this point, like anything in the set that royally blows up or goes berserk, this will catch it. So you won't have a flaming transformer sitting in your living room or whatever. Worst comes down to worst. These things, when they go, they stink. Like they will stink up your house for days. So you don't want that to happen. You want to prevent that, actually. I didn't like the cord that was on it. It seemed to split real easy, so it made me worry that, you know, if someone gave it a jerk or something, it might split open, so I don't want to take that chance. Now, the last thing I'm going to do is add the audio input, and what I'm going to do is drill a hole through the back here. And what I've been doing lately, I bought a big box of rubber grommets. So you drill an oversized hole, put the grommet in there, and then you put your cord through and tie a knot, and that way you don't have to worry about it getting cut or chafed on the edge of the metal here. I used to file it down really smooth and then just glob it up with glue, which worked, but it was kind of gross and messy. This is much neater. All right, so we got our music input device installed. Did just put a little dab of glue right there, so when that dries, no one can, like, you know, push the cord in. Let's see. Need to figure out which one of these controls is music input.
कहते हैं हर प्रॉब्लम का सलूशन होता है, बस सही गाइडेंस चाहिए।
और सही गाइडेंस के लिए सिर्फ एक ही नाम, डॉक्टर वनीत शर्मा जी। डॉक्टर वनीत शर्मा। Hey man.
Oh, there we go. You guys flip it all the way over there.
I told them I was headed down to Chattanooga. I said, hop in, we're going there too. And the way they took off in a cloud of smoke, I still ain't believing it was true. They had the windows down and I was sitting in the back with my tongue still hung in my throat. He was hitting just about 110 and he said, man, what do you think?
Let's see if that's... I can't turn this music up while I've got my phone filming, but it seems like it's not as loud as I want it to be. Let me try something.
My lover stands on golden sands and watches the ships that go sailing somewhere.
That's definitely more reasonable. I think I'm going to clean that control one more time, the cause of all my ills. And then I'm going to have to do something unpleasant, which is flip this over and restring the dial. I didn't look at it, but I hope that schematic has a stringing diagram because it's completely off. I'll probably be able to figure it out anyway. I've done this so many times. Well, by Jove, I got lucky. There is a string diagram. You can see it starts here, and then goes around there and under here and back around and then back here 3 times and then up to the spring. That makes sense. We just basically want to turn the tuning condenser in that direction first, as that matches our diagram here. The string broke in half, but that's actually good. We have both pieces, so I can measure the correct amount of new dial string with this stuff. It's fishing line. It says braided nylon squidding line. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Probably has nothing to do with catching squids. It's probably some sort of fishing term that I'm not familiar with. Anyway, we'll measure that out, see if we still have the spring. We do. So this should not be as nearly as difficult as it usually is, because most of the time I don't have a stringing diagram and you just kind of have to guess and work it out. That wasn't too bad. Again, I was lucky because I had the stringing guide. But now everything's moving real nice here. To make it move even nicer, I'm going to oil all the little joints or pivot points for the tuning condenser. Just hit up all the little pulleys and bearings and stuff with a little bit of zoom spout oil. I just love saying that, zoom spout oil. And then we want to get the bearing in the front here, the tuning condenser, and the little bearing in the back. And then we also want to get the volume control shaft. This makes it feel like a lot nicer. That'll just eventually glide in there with capillary action. Oh yeah, smooth as butter, even feels nice. And tactile sensation with these things is just as important. You know, if someone's going to really enjoy using it in the future, if it feels nice to use, like, it just makes all the difference. It's kind of like when I was a kid growing up, I remember boom boxes were huge, and I think this is back in the era when the Japanese manufacturers were making just some killer things, and I remember those little buttons felt so good. It was just like the nice little clicky noise they made. And it turned out there are people that seriously focus on how a switch sounds. It's that tactile sensation. Little stuff like that makes a big difference. All right, just a few more things to do. I clean this faceplate up, and I'm cleaning the push buttons. I'm using just a little bit of warm water and a tad of ammonia. I've got some of the trim pieces. I'm gonna start polishing those. And I've got the knobs over there sitting, waiting to be polished as well. And I've waited about 2 hours, so I did put another coat on the radio. It's looking a little better. It doesn't look like it's just dry. I want it to have like a pretty high build to the finish. So that's looking better. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to polish up these knobs. I clean the glass as well. My idea is to get everything tidied up and ready so that tomorrow, once the finish has had a chance to cure and harden up, I can reinstall everything. Alright, welcome back to day number... can't remember anymore. I think it's day number 4. This finish cured overnight. It's been sitting in the sun all day. I went ahead and put this trim back on after polishing it a little bit so it looks a little better. Next thing to do is the grill cloth that was on it was kind of shot, so I went over to the museum. This is the original stuff here, and found these two guys. I think this will look better. I want to hold it up and see what it looks like first. I've got a little bit of a darker pattern here that might contrast. So we'll try them both on for size, and depending on which one looks better is the one that I will install.
Have you ever passed the corner of 4th and Grand, where a little ball of rhythm has a shoeshine stand? People gather round and they clap their hands. He's a great big bundle of joy. He pops a boogie woogie rag, the Chattanooga shoeshine boy. He charges you a nickel just to shine one shoe. He makes the oldest kind of leather.
Anyway, it seems like it's working pretty good. Trying to remember how to get. There we go. There's the bands.
Nothing lead. That game one below, one of 4 home runs for Bryce Harper this postseason. Game 2 had Manny Machado putting the icing on that.
A new campaign ad by incumbents.
Gas, bloating, stomach pain, or
Relief offered to tens of millions.
together.
Hey, I think we both got picks in UAB Western Kentucky, but we also have 58 minutes. And
All right. Well, I'll probably let it run there for a little while just to make sure nothing's going to happen. But I think it's done. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, considering that it was literally a basket case. But that's sometimes what the fun of doing these is all about, which is taking something that didn't have a whole lot of a hope and bringing it back to at least most of its former glory. Is the finish perfect? No, it's not a perfect job. I'm not a refinishing guy, but it's decent. I think it presents well. There's no runs or drips or anything like that. But not bad for an 80-year-old radio. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, I'll try to get to them in the comments section down below. And until the next time something comes across my workbench, which will be very soon. In fact, right after this set is put away. See you guys next time. Adios. Bye-bye.